quarantine due to COVID-19. We wish him well, and I ask unanimous consent that his written testimony be placed in the hearing record. Let me begin by thanking the women and men of your agencies who serve and protect the Capitol and Senate. Your agencies play key roles in ensuring that our physical space here on the Capitol campus is safe, not just for members of Congress and staff, but also the millions of visitors who are eagerly returning after 2 years as we reopen, and that our virtual security, our cyberspace, and IT infrastructure are also secure. During the COVID-19 pandemic, both the Senate and the House have continued to meet, which means many of your employees have had to show up in person for work. They have provided the Capitol campus with enhanced cleaning, PPE, food services, and critical IT enhancements for remote work. Then the January 6th attack on the Capitol happened, adding a whole new way in which we must think about and approach security while maintaining an open campus environment so that all people can visit and share this special place. We want to make sure the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms and the architect of the Capitol have the tools needed to continue keeping us safe and to keep up with both known and emerging threats. But balancing openness with security needs is not cheap, and both of your 2023 budget requests clearly reflect that. The AOC's budget increase for its security account alone is a eye-popping $637 million. I know this mainly reflects the need for adequate facilities and infrastructure support for the Capitol Police as they add more sworn officers, analysts, contracted security guards, and safety equipment, and the recommendations from the Physical Infrastructure Security Assessment of the Capitol campus completed earlier this year. However, this subcommittee will want a full accounting of those projects and why we need them if we are to provide the funding. The Senate Sergeant-at-Arms seeks an increase of $4 million, including 10 new staff, to support the physical security of senators and staff in and around the Capitol, as well as in their home states. This is understandable, given that threats against members increased by 107% last year. But General Gibson, I want to know how the SAA is making sure senators and the staff know how better to use the protective services you provide. This subcommittee has to make difficult decisions on funding, reforms, mission and operational structure, and physical security measures that directly affect our agencies and the Capitol campus. We want to make sure we find the right solutions. It will be up to us to provide you with the tools you need to implement those changes and hold you accountable for implementing them successfully. I'd also note that the U.S. Capitol was designed to be a safe, accessible place where Americans come together to witness and participate in our democracy. But if officials continue to inflame the public with irresponsible rhetoric and outrageous and false conspiracy theories, then our country and taxpayers pay a steep price, and some of that price tag is reflected in this elevated budget request. Clearly, security enhancements are needed, but all the security personnel and equipment in the world won't be enough to defend our institutions if this corrosive rhetoric continues and incorrect rhetoric continues. While we do not have a broader budget agreement yet for fiscal year 2023, we do know legislative branch is not insulated from that debate. Hopefully, we'll have the top-line number soon from Chairman Leahy and Vice Chairman Shelby so we can consider and move bipartisan appropriations bill. And with that, now I'd like to turn to my ranking member, Senator Braun. Senator Braun, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Blanton, General Gibson, for being here. Look forward to crafting something that's going to make sense. You know, your responsibility, architect of the Capitol, is for the maintenance of the grounds and office buildings. Sergeant-at-Arms, responsible for a full range of functions from emergency preparedness to telecommunications. As members of the Capitol Police Board, you both play a significant role in the security decisions made around the campus. Congress provided $300 million last summer in a security supplemental for upgrades, and we funded a number of priority security-related projects in the omnibus bill. The supplemental funding was on top of substantial increases to the legislative branch agencies in fiscal year 2022, a 12% boost over 21. Of course, we know there were extra normal circumstances, but this has to be taken in the context that our economy generally just grows 1.5% to 2.5% a year. And if you're not kind of in line with that, you're going to run into problems in the long run. Mr. Blanton, you're requesting a significant funding increase in fiscal 23. As we consider these requests, it's important that we make wise investments tailored to the most likely threats. In addition to security, you're both responsible for daily maintenance and operations. For hundreds of years, the American people have had the ability to freely visit these buildings. And I've been here a little over 3 years. And part of the beauty of being here, not only as a senator or representative or especially the public, is that ability to migrate freely. And of course, we won't go over the reasons why, but I think that everyone here that works here, and especially the public that wants to visit it, would appreciate that we get this thing back to normal. I sent a letter to Senator Schumer at the beginning of April urging him to do so. I was a strong supporter of Senator Hagerty's resolution to reopen the buildings, which the Senate passed unanimously in March. It's past time to fully reopen the Capitol to the way it was before COVID. COVID obviously was a hopefully once-in-a-century challenge. We learned a lot about it. Most of America is moving in a way that we know we're going to have to live with it. We've learned a lot about it. We should have never thrown caution to the wind in navigating through it, but we are where we are. So I think we need to move on. Majority Leader Schumer's insistence on keeping COVID restrictions in place has real consequences for staff in this building. And the Americans who would like to freely flow through it, I think, are wondering about it as well. Both are involved in reopening the Capitol, and I look forward to discussing in a way that has common sense to do so beyond where we are currently. Fiscal year 2023 requests for all ledge branch agencies is over $1 billion more than 2022. 20% increase, 7 to 8 times the increase in what our net economic growth is going to be. You look at the first quarter, we actually fell a little bit. I don't want to use statistics based on aberrations of the last 2 years, but in the long run, it needs to be more in line with what we can afford. As we look to fiscal 2023, we must evaluate how these resources are going to be spent, and ideally, it should be done in the process of a real budget consideration. I'm on the budget committee. It's kind of a useless appendage out here since we haven't used it in over 10 years. That is a head scratcher to most Americans because you couldn't get by without it. We ended up, bumping spending through an omnibus bill that took it up nearly 6%. And again, that's about 3 times the growth of our economy. We don't do budgets anymore. We need to get back into that, especially for something as important as this. We got to address these structural issues for the future of the country, for our kids and our grandkids. The system has got to work differently. This is just one small part of it. I look forward to working with Chairman Reid here to where we, at least on what we do, maybe set the example for the other areas of appropriations and come up with something that makes sense for the American public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Braun. Now I will ask our witnesses to offer their opening statements, approximately 5 minutes. Your written statements will be made part of the record. Let me begin with General Gibson. Ma'am.
Thank you. Chairman Reid, Ranking Member Braun, members of the subcommittee, I appreciate the opportunity to testify this morning in support of the Sergeant-at-Arms fiscal year 2023 budget request. And I want to begin by thanking you for supporting our FY22 request to include the Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery Fund, whose resources will enable the Sergeant-at-Arms to respond to unanticipated business needs, whether supporting state offices in the aftermath of a natural disaster or providing support in a communications-degraded environment. I understand my fiduciary responsibilities to America's taxpayers and remain committed to transparency in all expenditures. My team has made steady progress in strengthening our physical and cybersecurity posture, in pressing forward to modernize systems, and in enhancing our operational effectiveness and service support to the U.S. Senate. I am grateful for a strong working relationship with the Capitol Police, with the architect of the Capitol and his team, and with my counterparts in the House of Representatives. So if you would allow me a moment to highlight just a sampling of our recent work. Together with the Secretary of the Senate, we developed a Consolidated Senate Operations Center, or SOC. Lashed in with the Capitol Police Command Center, the SOC provides a single point of entry for information, situational awareness, event tracking, and queries, and for communicating with the Senate community. We're working to further enhance the SOC, but their situation tracking, community messaging, and support to Senate leadership and other decision makers already represents a vast improvement over past practices. In terms of network communications and cybersecurity, by next month, we will have completed migration from one legacy data center to 2 modern data centers, providing 2 resilient and geographically separated centers to ensure the availability of Senate networks during the most disruptive potential events for years to come. And we're also expanding and modernizing the services we provide the Senate community. We will open a passport office for senators and staff in Hart this summer and are making notary services available at the post office in Dirksen. PGDM is pioneering an online storefront that will enhance customers' ability to create, proofread, and submit graphic print orders remotely. New software will better enable order tracking, giving offices the ability to save frequently ordered items and provide a modern look, feel, and functionality to printing, graphics, and direct mail consumers. These are but a few sample advances that have been made possible by the resources that you provided during fiscal year 22. Thank you. For FY23, we request $285 million. That's approximately 1.7% more than our request for FY22, and 992 positions to directly support senators, their staffs, and constituents. This request reflects an increase of $9.7 million and 35 additional positions. We seek $5 million in no-year funding to upgrade audiovisual equipment in committee hearing rooms and $6.3 million to support recently authorized fellowship programs. Within the FY23 budget, we request $4.8 million in new funding to strengthen IT continuity. These funds will enhance contingency readiness through capabilities like CMS, Crisis Management Suite kits that provide secure, deployable communications in an emergency, or satellite phones for state offices, providing a reliable contingency communication platform in the event that cellular communications are unavailable, as was the case last year for 11 state offices during Hurricane Ida. This budget will also enable our CIO, Chief Information Officer, and cybersecurity teams to modernize aging IT systems and remain steadfast in defending communication networks, both at the Capitol complex and in state offices, against increasingly sophisticated and aggressive cyber adversaries. Of the 35 additional positions requested, 10 will support the Senate's Chief Information Officer, reinforcing the resiliency of IT systems, improving the quality of online applications and services that are developed for Senate users, and expanding our capacity to respond to help desk requests and equipment needs, and completing the Unified Communications and Collaboration Initiative. 10 positions directly respond to the growing number of threats that are communicated against the Capitol and against senators themselves, and these hires will coordinate with the Capitol Police as well as local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to improve our threat intelligence and information sharing and coordinate additional law enforcement support when needed for senators in transit or in their home districts. The last 15 positions will provide operational support to the Senate community and the Sergeant-at-Arms' greatest resource, which is its people. These positions support the continued demand for Employee Assistance Program, which, thanks to your support, remains a free and confidential resource promoting personal resiliency among Senate employees across the nation's time zones. Within our Office of Human Resources, requested funding will better position us to recruit and retain a talented, productive, and inclusive workforce. One position provides an additional proctor for the PAGE program, and another ensures our acquisition workforce and contracting officers achieve necessary training certifications. In sum, the additional FTEs will further strengthen our security, support much-needed modernization, and provide better support to the thousands of employees who sustain the Senate's functions. I will close by saying that the Sergeant-at-Arms has accomplished much in the past year, but we are just getting started, particularly with multi-year modernization and security initiatives. I remain deeply impressed by the professionalism and commitment of the women and men I am honored to lead, and am tremendously proud of their contributions. With your support, I look forward to sharing their further accomplishments in the year to come and stand ready to answer your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Reed, Ranking Member Braun, and members of the subcommittee. I do thank you for your support for our FY22 budget as well, and the opportunity to testify today. In particular, I appreciate the leadership and long hours by the two lead staffers for this subcommittee, Majority Clerk Jessica Berry and her counterpart, Margaret Wiles. During these last 2 years, we have faced unprecedented challenges. Every day I'm struck by the commitment and talent of our hardworking employees. Day and night, rain or shine, AOC employees are serving Congress and maintaining the treasured buildings and grounds around the Capitol complex. The AOC's budget request seeks support for critical measures to ensure the safety of members of Congress, staff, and visitors across campus. United in our shared mission and goal, we are constantly coordinating with Chief Thomas Manger and the Capitol Police to keep the campus safe. As a member of the Capitol Police Board, I am grateful for the strong collaboration with my partner here, General Karen Gibson, as well as General William Walker on the House. Together, we are aligning resources to reflect our shared priorities. While some security challenges are more visible than others, we are working continuously on physical security improvements. At the same time, the AOC also seeks resources to continue rapidly responding to unplanned critical security events. In the area of cybersecurity, the AOC needs to continue support to safeguard our networks and utility systems from malicious threats. The AOC's budget also reflects essential life safety projects to protect everyone who works and visits here. There are areas of our aging infrastructure that are hundreds of years old. One critical area is the very serious and pressing need to address utility tunnel repairs. Deteriorating concrete and high-pressure steam piping components need immediate repair to reduce the risk of tunnel failure. These repairs are urgent for life safety to avoid interruptions of electrical, water, steam, and communications services across the Capitol for an extended period of time. As this committee knows, delayed funding has consequences. We must take immediate steps to address deferred maintenance and infrastructure repairs across the Capitol campus. In addition, we are requesting resources to train and prepare AOC staff to respond to emergency situations, including natural disasters and other life safety emergency events. While security and infrastructure improvements are a top priority, I also remain focused on transformative change within AOC. We need to cultivate and maintain a safe, positive, and productive work environment where people have the necessary skills, training, equipment, and support to succeed. AOC employees are constantly working across the campus to maintain these treasured buildings and grounds. This strong work ethic reflects the cultural transformation happening across our agency during these tough times. We are working constantly to reconcile the cost of historic preservation with the pressing modern demands. Across the agency, our team of exceptional professionals is working tirelessly to upgrade our capabilities and facilities. To achieve our mission, we need adequate resources to meet the technological, space, sustainability, and accessibility needs of a 21st century workforce. With the committee's support, we can ensure the success of Congress, the Supreme Court, and the Library of Congress. Looking ahead, I remain optimistic and determined that we will carry out the legacy of perseverance and patriotism that these historic buildings and grounds inspire of all who visit here. On behalf of the Architect of the Capitol staff, I thank you for your support and look forward to answering your questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Blanton. And let me now ask a few questions and then recognize Senator Braun. Both of you play critical roles in the security of the Capitol from different perspectives. Both of you sit on the Capitol Police Board. So we are now 17 months past January 6th. How have you changed your posture and mission on security and protection? How have you had to adjust your own roles, and how are the agencies working together? Let me start with the General Gibson and then Mr. Blanton.
Thank you, Senator Reed. I would begin with some of the work that we've done together as part of the Capitol Police Board Our first priority last year, in line with hearing, study, and recommendations from the Rules Committee, was to select a new chief, to select a permanent chief for the Capitol Police Board, and I think Chief Manger has done a superb job in beginning to transform the department. Some of the other work we did was associated with revising our manual of procedures for the Capitol Police Board, work that had not been addressed since a GAO study of 2017. And as a result, we have begun to conduct our business in a manner that is far more transparent, inclusive, and responsive, and formalizing and memorializing deliberation and decision in a way that it was not previously. We have supported the department's efforts to increase recruiting and retention, which is very critical to our ability to reopen the Capitol in the way that it was open prior to the pandemic of 2020. And we have worked closely with the Capitol Police and physical security working groups and in working with the Office of the IG to get at some of those shortcomings. I'll leave it to the architect to talk about some of the prioritized physical security enhancements that we've identified, but we've also built and sustained some strong collaborative relationships with other entities like the Secret Service, the FBI, Metropolitan Police, Department of Homeland Security, and others to ensure that we have a common understanding of the threats that we face here in the National Capital Region. Internal to the U.S. Senate and the Sergeant at Arms, I've already mentioned standing up together with the Secretary, a Senate Operations Center, not a separate and competing Operations Center with the Capitol Police Command Center, but one that is complementary and I think has demonstrated an ability to much better track events as they're occurring and communicate with the Senate community. We are also looking to revamp training that we provide, emergency preparedness, life safety, and continuity training for the Senate community to get beyond the in-person training that periodically occurs to make sure that it's also available on demand, online, for those who want to refresh themselves at any time. And I've mentioned in my opening statement some of the things that we would like to do in terms of enhancing our ability to track the threats, that dramatic increase in threats to senators that you mentioned, to deliver a clearer understanding to senators and recommendations and conduct that outreach so there's a full understanding of the security suite available to them to enhance their personal security or the security of their families.
Thank you. Mr. Blanton, please.
Thank you. And I want to echo the comments about the Capitol Police Board. It was truly been a transformative year for the board, and it was needed, and I want you to understand that we have a great team now and are working on some great initiatives. I also wanted to say that with the funding we received last year, or the security supplemental, is going to go a long way to protecting the Capitol campus. We spent the last year utilizing in-house designing and planning resources in order for us to be able to maximize the amount of actual product that we were going to put into the security measures, as opposed to using those funds by having a contractor have to design it. In addition, we had our comprehensive physical security assessment, and that the biggest outcome of that physical security assessment, besides the projects and the dollars, and I realize they're expensive, is the fact that we now have agreement of security standards on the Capitol campus. That's something that we had not had previously, and it's very important for everyone to know that we have standards now to maintain the safety for members, staff, and visitors. Internal to the organization, we also took a really strong look at our emergency management program. In conjunction with the work done by the Capitol Police and the Capitol Police Board for the drills with the sergeants at arms, we had to really realize that in an emergency situation, many times AOC's work begins after the drill actually is over. And so then we had to really focus on how are we responding when everybody can evacuate the building, and now we need to make sure we get people to come back in. And so we're focusing our training on that aspect of the emergency response.
Well, thank you very much. General, you mentioned the coordination with local authorities. Can you, and again, I think I'll commend you and the sergeant, the architect of the Capitol, and local authorities for the recent incident involving the truck demonstrations. But are there other steps that you must take to improve coordination?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I think that while the strong relationships that have been built, both with some of the domestic agencies and local law enforcement, require continued sustainment to keep those relationships strong, I think that the understanding within the law enforcement community at the Capitol of imminent threats to the Capitol from things in the area like the trucker convoy is very strong. One area specifically where we do need increased support, and I would thank you for the language that was in the National Defense Authorization Act, is in the area of cybersecurity. What we've found is that policies for sharing intelligence between the executive branch and the ledge branch are written entirely with legislative oversight in mind, without having previously considered that there might be people in the legislative branch, such as our cybersecurity teams, that need to make operational decisions in real time about imminent threats. And so, thanks to that language, our collective counsel team has begun work with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to recraft some of the policies that would allow intelligence sharing for operational requirements, separate from oversight. And my greatest priority there would be for cybersecurity, so that we could have direct communications with our Cybersecurity Operations Center and instead of having to run those kinds of threat reports through legislative liaison channels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Braun, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, of course, the Capitol's been basically shut down since the pandemic. We currently are in phase one, where school groups can come in through office buildings. Phase two is supposed to begin on May 30th, and that means that school groups and maybe pre-identified groups can enter through the Capitol Visitor Center. Is that still definitely going to happen on May 30th? That's just around the corner. General Gibson.
Thank you for that question, Senator, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the phased reopenings. I, too, am eager to reopen the Capitol in the way that it was before the pandemic, and share the beauty and history of this building with the American public and foreign visitors as well. The limiting factor right now is not COVID-related, but an insufficient number of uniformed police officers to man the many positions associated with the Capitol Visitor Center. And if I could I'll answer directly your question. Yes, we do anticipate entering phase two as planned.
On May 30th?
On May 30th,
okay.
Yes. The shortcoming of officers is due to three principal factors. One, increased attrition in 20 and 21, largely due to the pandemic, to January 6th, the aftermath of January 6th, and the bubble of a large number of officers who joined on 9/11 becoming retirement eligible. Second, a lack of input. The Federal Law Enforcement Training Center was closed to recruit classes during the pandemic, so we had a larger than normal attrition and no input. And then the third is an increased number of posts, some of which are associated with ongoing repair to damage that was done in 2021. So increased attrition, no input, and an increased requirement. The Capitol Police Board has been working with the chief on a Get Well plan. That we have offered retention incentives and updated pay schedules and increased recruiting. We've also begun to bring on this week contract Capitol security officers to augment the uniformed force at some of the secondary positions, places like the Library of Congress, the Botanic Gardens, parking garages, that then allow us to put more officers in the Capitol Visitor Center. And with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center reopening, we've had a new class of approximately 115 recruits who recently joined, and 7 additional classes scheduled for FY22. So that's the Get Well plan, but it does not allow us to immediately reopen to the extent that we would like, because there are significant posts that are associated with the Capitol Visitor Center. We do anticipate entering phase 2 as planned, and I would offer that in addition to the school groups, we still open the Capitol to staff-led tours and look forward to expanding further to the full extent that we can as that additional police staffing allows.
So phase 2 scheduled on time. That's just a little under 3 weeks. So phase 3, let's just call that back to normal, which to me, that should be the real aspiration. Yes. I think it would beg the question, has there been any imminent threat? January 6th, obviously, being the focal point. You mentioned truckers earlier. Many wonder how palpable, how real that threat is. And would you care to discuss, you mentioned, had the truckers done anything during that issue to where it impacted the Capitol, or was that just on the roadways in the city?
Certainly. So I'll address that, I think, in 2 parts. First, the trucker convoy, and then more generally, threats as we see them to the Capitol. So the trucker convoys, I think we were able to learn a great deal by the example in Ottawa, where the Parliament was essentially besieged. And as soon as we began to see that situation evolving in Canada, the Capitol Police and others started to talk to counterparts there in Ontario, learn from what was occurring there, and develop a plan together with the rest of the local government and law enforcement entities in the D.C. region to counter any similar activity should it occur. It was largely traffic-related, but it did impose a significant manpower cost initially for the Capitol Police as they manned additional...
Did you erect fence during that stage? Because that's a really costly and timely process. I'm just curious.
We did not erect fence then, no.
So
we did not
you did enough to where you learned from what happened in Canada.
Oh, absolutely.
And so was there any other incident that you'd call an imminent threat other than that?
Yes, I would, actually. So when I think of threats, and I'll set aside cyber threats, which is our daily fight that we have, but in terms of physical threats to the Capitol, state offices, and senators, I would say the most likely threat is always lone actors, individuals, whether those are mental health consumers, like we...
But I know that, but were there any?
Yes, April 2nd, August 19th, October 5th of last year. And so those were imminent threats by, in fact, we had a fatality on April 2nd. August 19th was the gentleman who parked his car outside the Library of Congress, a truck, and threatened to blow up the Library of Congress. And October 5th was another gentleman in a truck who refused to move from in front of the Supreme Court.
And that would have been out of character with what happens routinely in prior years?
No, I think that is something...
Well, and you don't need to... what I'm saying is generally it looks like, just from my observation, we've gotten back into a rhythm where we've learned a lot from the incident, even with averting the truckers from maybe impacting the Capitol. And I just think there's a strong kind of err on the side of, especially since our heads are up. I mean, we're attentive to it, to get back into where we're erring on the side of phase 3 or what was happening before all of this. So what is the timeline in your mind of where we get it back to where it was before?
So the chief, I think, anticipates that it will not be until 2023, and I would defer to him, and certainly we can follow up afterwards, until we've had enough of the new recruits in the force to open and man the positions in the Capitol Visitor Center that were manned in 2019.
And is the workforce, and this will be my last question before I hand it back over, is the workforce, how close is it with the new recruits to where it was pre-January 6th, number-wise?
I didn't come prepared, Senator, with those numbers, but we can easily get...
I'd say with the additional over 100 that you brought on, that it's got to be close to where it was, and then it's a question of how you manage that risk of getting back to where we were before, and that you know you're going to add more individuals over time. And I would personally like to hear when in 2023, and I think if you could say January versus December, that would be good for the country and for the people that work around here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Braun. Let me begin round two. Mr. Blanton, your request includes $500 million in construction project recommended by the Physical Security Assessment of the Capitol campus. It also includes $100 million to the design and construction of screening vestibules for the Capitol, Senate, and House office buildings. These are significant amounts of money. So, and General Gibson, your role on the police board, if you want to comment also, but to the extent you can share with us, what security construction projects do you consider to be the most important and urgent to the campus so we can have a sense of priorities?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And I will.
Could you bring your microphone a little bit closer? I have paratrooper ears.
I will say that we're going to provide you within the next couple of weeks a very high fidelity list of projects that are prioritized from 1 to N. In general, I would say that the completing of the exterior doors and windows to meet the standard that we have developed as part of the assessment would be the highest absolute priority.
Looking at these projects, there's always a tension and a balance between security and aesthetics, for want of a better term, so that this doesn't look like a fortified zone. It looks like the Capitol of the United States. So, in fact, things like the anti-scale fencing that are up around the court today obviously detract from the historic vision of the Capitol. Have you been able to balance those successfully? And I would assume it would obviously increase the cost of the project to do so. Is that?
Yes, I'll say that's actually one of the specialties of my chief security officer's working group that does the security projects. I always say that a good security project is something that you don't recognize. You don't realize it's there. Mm-hmm. We have artisans that can take the historic nature and preserve that while still having the doors or equipment look as if it did when it was originally installed. And I would reference, I know it's not on the Senate side, but I would reference the work we did at the Speaker's lobby on the House chamber, where those brand new doors look exactly like the original doors, but they're now rated.
Thank you very much. The issue of the personnel, and General, you spoke about it in terms of the major factor. It's also related to the type of security infrastructure you have to have. If you've got more personnel, then you presumably need more infrastructure. And that's another question of balance. Has that been taken into consideration by both of you in terms of your overall plan, the number of personnel you and the chief need, and the facilities you're building? And I'll start with you, General.
Yes, Senator, I would say it is, which is why we are requesting an additional FTE of 35 personnel, and a high number of those will go to our security, our chief information officer, and to our physical security, operational security teams.
And with respect to the visitor center, you pointed out that that's the major issue in terms of the personnel drains. My assumption is that you're not expanding the number of personnel in the center. Right. You just don't have the
and actually
adequate number.
Senator, it's not me, it's the Capitol Police. That when the Capitol Visitor Center is open, it requires some number of officers, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but I believe it's in the range of like 50 to 70 officers to man the Capitol Visitor Center, as it was in 2019.
Right. So we're not...
It is not an increase.
We're not enhancing the number. We're simply trying to get back to 2019, which was the norm, we thought, at that point. This is an area you've touched upon, and I don't know if you can add further details, but part of your request, General, is for additional resources for the protection of senators' staff, both here and at home. Can you further elaborate on the monies you need, how you're going to spend them, and the threat?
Thank you, Senator. That is an area where we seek to increase the number of personnel, and it would be 10 personnel, 3 of them specifically for state operations, and 3 of them for that threat tracking together with Department of Homeland Security, Capitol Police, et cetera, in order to do liaison and information sharing with officers, with the senators and their officers. And to increase an understanding of the security kit that is available to them, and to ensure that we have adequate security at state offices as well, not just here at the Capitol itself.
And with respect to state offices and state locales, it'll be a coordinating position. You'll be using local law enforcement, presumably, as the actual physical security personnel.
Absolutely, Senator. It is very rare when that's been a plus-up of Capitol Police. It is typically law enforcement liaison to ensure there's an understanding, perhaps, of at the member's request, at the senator's request. It is always at their request that they may want augmented security at an event, or if we've had a heightened spike of threats against a senator. Sometimes we coordinate with law enforcement support, again, at the senator's request, to have additional drive-bys of a residence. We do physical security. The Capitol Police do physical security assessments of the residents and make recommendations for ways in which a senator and his or her family might be better protected.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Blanton, so I think our restaurant operations within the Capitol have been hurt significantly because we haven't had any people here. That, again, was one of the highlights, I think, of some visits, especially when senators would be able to take folks into the dining room and so forth, but general traffic is just way down. I think that they are getting some type of help through the end of the year, and that's why I think it's important, if 2023 is the target for normal, that we need to really aspire to get there then. Otherwise, that will arise again as an issue. What is the health and status of the restaurant services currently? And rather than have to put a stipend, enhanced help in there, I think that fixes itself, saves the taxpayers money, and we have services that I think the public appreciate back to normal. What's the status currently?
So due to COVID and the restrictions in the building, the revenue from the restaurants at one point was down 90%. It has since rebounded 37% above that. But they're still...
Means it's still off around 60%.
Yes, and they are still hemorrhaging money. There is a delta between what the Senate expects the restaurants to be able to deliver and the cost that for the services that they are providing. And
have you calculated what phase 2 reopening will do for the restaurants?
So right now, it will do more for the CVC restaurant than it would be for the restaurants in the Senate buildings, because it's just pure amount of traffic coming in and sitting down and eating. We spent the past year working with the Senate community on a restaurants master plan, and in this actual budget, we have $8.1 million for the Senate side to redesign their restaurants, and $41 million on the Capitol building to re-envision the kitchens for the Senate dining room so they'd be more efficient.
And that's all good. So you've eliminated then COVID as a reason for whatever the current status is. It'd just be general security concerns, correct?
As the Sergeant at Arms said, it's the concern with the number of police personnel to open up the CVC. I can say from a business continuity perspective, I would love to have the 2 million plus visitors a year back, because that will make...
So COVID is endemic. We're all going to be dealing with it, from government to business, with everything we've learned from it. There's no imminent threat other than the ones that you cited, that may happen now and then during a normal year. I just think that everything I'm hearing, we're kind of erring on the side of maybe this thing occurring deep into 2023, and I believe that's not an aggressive enough goal. And it begs the question, will those basic services that we were using before be able to hang on without more government help? So let me move to another concern, fencing. See that there's $6.4 million there, and is that a fee that we're paying to the fencing company regardless of whether we use fencing or not? Is that kind of like just a contingency fee? And would it cost us any more than that, say if you had to put fencing up 7 or 8 times in a year versus once or twice? Explain the $6.4 million.
So the fencing budget is a combination of a readiness fee so that we could have the fencing available to install within 24 hours, and an expectation of the number of installations that we would do for the fence for large events.
And is there another cost in addition to it once you'd actually have the need for fencing to put up on some occasion?
Yes, you're paying for the labor now for the contractor who's installing the fencing.
So you're kind of reserving the ability for $6.4 million to have them on call, you said within 72 hours?
24 hours.
24 hours, okay. Again, that may in the big scheme of things here not sound like a lot of money. In most places that is a lot. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some type of holding fee for it, but again, this is above and beyond what we would have ever done before, and I think you're going to need to find that proper balance and not maybe generalize based upon what did occur. And I'm assuming this would be an annual fee that would need to renew each year?
Yes.
Okay. Keep me informed, keep us informed here on this committee. And again, I think that is something that we got to be careful with, because we're building in another cost that I wonder, especially as we could taper away from it over time, whether it's necessary. This may not mean much, but I'm going to mention it because it's maybe symptomatic, emblematic of how the place runs in general. Inspector General review that on the architect of the Capitol had reimbursed $38,529 in unallowable costs to a contractor over in the Cannon building. It included items such as baby gifts, florist costs, and business cards. While this is chump change in the big scheme of things here anymore, it's concerning that there were so many unallowable costs that were reimbursed, and the renewal project, by the way, is $182 million in total, over budget to begin with. You care to comment on either the being over budget that much, or the fact that somehow 38 grand slipped through in what should have been caught fairly quickly before it got reimbursed?
Yes, Senator. So I'll address the 38,000. And you get to remember it's in a program that is $900 million. So it is small, and our goal is zero, obviously. But the bulk of that money was reimbursed in previous phases of the contract, and we have since received a credit back from the contractor for the unallowable costs. In the current phase, it was only $1,550 worth of unallowable costs that we did receive a credit for.
Would that normally be caught by an inspector general review, or would that normally, do you have protocols in place where your own auditors or accountants would try to find that before it had to be caught at the last resort?
Yeah. So ideally, it's during the invoicing process. But as you may guess, in a $900 million program, the invoices are large, and sometimes things slip through. We have put much more rigor involved in our invoice processing, which is why the number in this phase is so low comparatively.
I would agree with your proportionality. I think the $182 million over budget would be a much more concerning figure. Thank you for the answer.
Do you have any additional questions, Senator?
I'm good.
Thank you very much, Senator. There could be, and likely, additional written questions we'll submit to you and ask you to respond. But this concludes the Legislative Branch Appropriations Subcommittee hearing regarding fiscal year 2023 funding for the Architect of the Capitol, the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms, and the Congressional Budget Office. I want to thank Mr. Blanton and General Gibson for their testifying today. The hearing record will remain open for 7 days, allowing members to submit statements and or questions to the record, which should be sent to the subcommittee by close of business on Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. The next hearing of the subcommittee will be held on Wednesday, May 25th at 3:30 p.m. in S128 of the Capitol, when we will hear testimony from the Chief of the U.S. Capitol Police, the Librarian of Congress, the Comptroller of the Government Accountability Office regarding the fiscal year 2023 budget request. Until then, the committee will stand adjourned.